There comes a morning in every weary soul's life when heaven whispers softly before the world begins to shout. A morning when the sun does not merely rise in the sky, but rises within the human spirit. Today is such a morning. Today is not merely another page on the calendar. It is another sacred opportunity to breathe deeply, stand firmly, and remember that God has never abandoned the hearts He created. Some people woke up today carrying burdens too heavy for their hands to hold. Some opened their eyes with questions still unanswered, fears still lingering, and tears still hidden behind tired smiles. Anxiety has a way of creeping into the corners of the mind like an unwanted storm, convincing people they must carry tomorrow's troubles before today has even begun. But this morning we gather our hearts in prayer and declare that peace shall have the final word. For peace is not the absence of trouble. Peace is the presence of God in the middle of it. It is the quiet assurance that while life may tremble around you, your spirit can remain anchored in something eternal. God did not awaken you this Thursday morning to leave you defeated by fear. He awakened you because purpose still breathes inside you. Mercy still walks beside you. Grace still covers your journey. So today, let every anxious thought loosen its grip. Let every fear bow before faith. Let every restless heart remember that God is already standing in the future you are worried about. Before your feet touched the floor this morning, His love had already gone ahead of you, making crooked places straight and carrying burdens you were never meant to bear alone. And maybe you have been strong for too long. Maybe you have smiled while silently breaking. Maybe you have prayed while secretly wondering if heaven still hears your voice. But listen carefully. God has not forgotten your name. The same God who calms oceans can calm the storms inside your soul. The same God who paints the morning sky with beauty can restore joy to your weary heart. This prayer today is an invitation to release what has been choking your peace. Release the fear, release the disappointment, release the pressure to control every outcome. For there is freedom in trusting God with what you cannot fix yourself. There is healing in surrender. There is strength in knowing that divine peace is greater than human understanding. So breathe again this morning, hope again this morning, trust again this morning. For Thursday, the 14th of May is not arriving empty-handed. It comes carrying fresh mercy, new strength, divine comfort, and the gentle reminder that you do not walk alone. There is something holy about the morning. Before the noise arrives, before the demands begin pulling at your sleeves, before the world tells you who you must be, the morning quietly reminds you whose you are. Dawn does not rush into the sky screaming for attention. It comes gently, stretching golden fingers across the earth, whispering hope into tired windows and weary hearts. And every sunrise is heaven's way of declaring that mercy has survived the night. Some people wake up carrying yesterday like chains around their ankles. Regret sits beside them before their feet even touch the floor. Fear waits at the edge of the bed like an uninvited visitor. Bills remain unpaid. Hearts remain bruised. Questions remain unanswered. Yet somehow the morning still arrives faithfully, as though God Himself leans close to the human spirit and says, "Child, begin again." To start the day with God's presence is to understand that life was never meant to be carried alone. Too many souls walk into their mornings already defeated because they try to face the world armed only with their own strength. They rely on schedules, on plans, on appearances, on fragile confidence that cracks the moment trouble knocks at the door. But there is a different way to rise. There is a sacred power in waking up and first turning your heart toward heaven. Before the coffee is poured, before the phone screen lights up your face, before anxiety has the chance to rehearse its speeches in your mind, there must be a moment when your soul says, "Good morning, Lord." And what a beautiful thing happens when God enters a morning. Fear loses some of its authority. Loneliness no longer fills the room so completely. Even sorrow begins to loosen its grip. For the presence of God does not always remove the storm immediately, but it changes the spirit of the person standing inside the storm. Some people think prayer must be polished and perfect, wrapped in elegant language fit for cathedral walls. But God has always understood the trembling voice. He has always listened to the exhausted mother whispering prayers while packing lunches before sunrise. He has always heard the tired worker asking for strength while driving to another long shift. He has always understood the silent tears of the person sitting at the edge of the bed, saying nothing more than, "Lord, help me today." And heaven bends low to hear every word. When you begin your day with God's presence, you stop measuring your worth by the chaos surrounding you. The world may call you forgotten, but God calls you chosen. The world may remind you of your failures, but God reminds you that grace still has your name written on it. Human beings are often cruel historians. They remember every mistake you ever made. But God is a loving Father who sees not only where you have been, but also who you are becoming. Morning prayer becomes more than routine. It becomes spiritual breathing. Just as the lungs need air, the soul needs divine connection. Without it, people suffocate beneath worry, pressure, bitterness, and fear. Yet one moment in God's presence can restore what sleepless nights have drained away. There are mornings when strength does not arrive loudly. It comes quietly. It comes in the decision to rise one more time after heartbreak. It comes in the courage to keep believing after disappointment. It comes when trembling hands fold together in prayer, even after life has given every reason to quit. God honors that kind of faith. The beautiful truth is that God's presence is not reserved for perfect people. If perfection were required, nobody could enter. His presence is for the brokenhearted, the uncertain, the weary, the anxious, the flawed. It is for people who are still learning how to trust. It is for those who have cried themselves to sleep and still found enough hope to whisper a prayer at dawn. Sometimes God's presence arrives like stillness. Sometimes it arrives like unexpected strength. Sometimes it comes through a scripture remembered at the exact right moment. Sometimes it comes through the warmth of sunlight touching your face after a season of darkness. However it comes, the soul recognizes it. Peace has a language all its own. And when God walks with you into the day, ordinary moments become sacred. A crowded kitchen becomes holy ground. A long commute becomes time for reflection. A difficult workplace becomes an opportunity for grace. Life does not suddenly become easy, but it becomes bearable because you know you are no longer carrying it alone. There is a dangerous lie many people believe, that they must first fix themselves before approaching God. So they hide their wounds, they hide their doubts, they hide their exhaustion. But healing has never begun with hiding. Healing begins with honesty. God is not frightened by human weakness. He is not shocked by your tears. He is not intimidated by your fears. He already knows every burden hidden beneath your smile. And still he says, "Come to me." What comfort lives in those words. To start the morning with God's presence is also to surrender control. Human beings exhaust themselves trying to predict every outcome, solve every problem, and carry every responsibility. Anxiety grows wherever trust disappears. But prayer gently unclenches the hands of the soul. It says, "Lord, I cannot control today, but I trust the one who holds today." That trust changes everything. Suddenly, the future no longer feels so terrifying. The unknown no longer feels so dark. Even uncertainty begins to lose its power because faith reminds the heart that God is already standing in tomorrow. And perhaps that is the greatest miracle of morning prayer. Not that circumstances instantly change, but that people change while praying. Bitter hearts soften, restless minds become calm, fearful spirits grow courageous, broken people discover they are still capable of hope. The sunrise itself becomes a sermon. It tells humanity that darkness never wins forever. Every night, no matter how long, eventually bows before morning. And if God can command the sun to rise faithfully over a weary world, surely he can bring light into the hidden places of the human heart. So this morning, before the noise of the world grows loud, pause long enough to welcome God's presence. Let gratitude enter before fear does. Let worship enter before worry does. Let peace enter before pressure does. Sit quietly if you must. Cry honestly if you need to. Pray imperfectly if that is all you can manage. Heaven is not waiting for performance. Heaven is waiting for surrender. And as you move through this Thursday morning, carry this truth deep within your spirit. You do not walk alone. God walks beside you into every conversation, every challenge, every uncertainty, every hidden battle. His presence goes ahead of you, making pathways where fear once stood. His love surrounds you when loneliness whispers lies. His peace steadies you when anxiety tries to shake your foundation. The day may not unfold perfectly. Some prayers may not be answered the way you hoped. Some burdens may still require endurance. But if God's presence walks with you, then you already possess something greater than temporary comfort. You possess divine companionship. And there is no richer blessing than beginning the day held in the hands of God. Anxiety is a thief that arrives quietly. It does not always crash through the front door with noise and violence. Sometimes it slips softly into the mind before sunrise, settling itself into the chest before the day has even begun. It whispers dreadful possibilities into otherwise ordinary mornings. It convinces weary souls to fear battles that have not yet happened. And little by little, it steals the beauty from the present moment by chaining the heart to worries about tomorrow. There are people walking through life smiling on the outside while silently unraveling within. They answer questions politely. They fulfill responsibilities faithfully. They laugh when necessary. Yet beneath the surface, their thoughts run endlessly like storms without rest. They carry invisible weight in their shoulders, tension in their breathing, exhaustion in their spirits. Some have become so accustomed to anxiety that they no longer remember what peace feels like. But God never intended for his children to live imprisoned by fear. Faith is not pretending problems do not exist. Faith is not blindness. Faith sees the storm clearly and still believes there is a hand stronger than the wind. It is the quiet decision to trust God while uncertainty still stands at the door. It is waking up every morning and declaring that fear will not become the ruler of your spirit. The human mind is often tempted to rehearse disaster. It imagines heartbreak before it comes. It anticipates rejection before a word is spoken. It predicts failure before the journey even begins. Anxiety feeds itself on the terrible habit of what if. What if things fall apart? What if I cannot survive this? What if the answer never comes? What if tomorrow becomes worse than today? But faith speaks a different language. Faith asks, what if God provides? What if grace arrives exactly on time? What if this burden becomes the birthplace of strength? What if the very thing meant to break me becomes the thing that transforms me? And somewhere between fear and trust, the soul must make a decision. There comes a moment when weary people realize they can no longer survive carrying every burden by themselves. Their minds have become overcrowded with worry. Their hearts have become heavy with trying to control outcomes that belong in God's hands. They are exhausted from attempting to predict every twist in life's road. And in that sacred exhaustion, many finally discover surrender. Surrender is not weakness, it is wisdom. It takes courage to admit human limitation. It takes strength to confess, Lord, I cannot carry this alone anymore. The world often praises self-sufficiency, teaching people to depend entirely upon themselves. Yet the Spirit was never created to function apart from divine help. A flower disconnected from sunlight withers slowly. A soul disconnected from God's peace does the same. And so faith begins where control ends. Some mornings, letting go of anxiety happens in quiet prayer. A trembling voice whispers into the stillness, God, I give this fear to you. Other mornings, it happens through tears falling onto folded hands. Sometimes it happens while driving to work, sitting in silence, or standing beneath the early light of dawn, realizing that the same God who holds the oceans together is fully capable of holding together one fragile human heart. There is such tenderness in knowing that God does not shame people for their fears. He does not scold the anxious soul struggling to believe. Instead, he draws near. Like a loving father comforting a frightened child, he reminds the heart again and again, do not be afraid. Not because life will always be easy, not because trouble will never come, but because divine presence is greater than earthly fear. Anxiety often grows strongest when people feel alone. Isolation becomes fertile soil for fearful thoughts. The mind wanders through dark hallways, imagining worst-case scenarios, and without truth to interrupt those thoughts, fear multiplies quickly. But faith reminds the soul that it has never been abandoned. Even now, God walks beside the weary. He walks beside the single mother, wondering how she will provide for tomorrow. He walks beside the grieving man, trying to smile through heartbreak. He walks beside the student overwhelmed by pressure, the worker burdened by uncertainty, the aging soul afraid of what the future may bring. Heaven has never stopped paying attention to human pain, and there is comfort in knowing that God sees what others overlook. People may not notice your silent struggles. They may never hear the battles raging in your mind at 3 o'clock in the morning, but God sees every hidden worry, every sleepless night, every tear swallowed before it could fall. Faith grows stronger when people remember who God has already been in their lives. The same God who carried them through yesterday's storms will not suddenly abandon them today. Human memory is often short when fear becomes loud. Anxiety convinces people that past victories do not matter. Yet faith gently points backward and says, "Look again. You survived before. Grace sustained you before. Doors opened before. Healing came before. And if God remained faithful then, He remains faithful now." There is also something deeply healing about releasing the need to understand everything. Anxiety demands explanations for every mystery. It wants guarantees. It wants certainty. It wants immediate answers to every unanswered prayer. But faith learns to rest even without complete understanding. Some seasons make sense only in hindsight. At the time, the closed door feels cruel. The delay feels unbearable. The waiting feels endless. Yet later, many discover that what once felt like rejection was actually protection. What once appeared to be abandonment was divine redirection. God was working in places human eyes could not yet see. Faith allows the heart to breathe while waiting for clarity. And perhaps one of the greatest acts of spiritual courage is choosing peace while circumstances remain unresolved. Anybody can feel calm when life is predictable. But divine peace is different. It exists even when uncertainty remains. It settles over the soul like gentle rain in the middle of drought. It says, even now, God is still good. That kind of peace cannot be manufactured by positive thinking alone. It is born through relationship with God. It grows every time fear is surrendered instead of worshipped. Every prayer becomes an act of release. Every moment of trust weakens anxiety's grip. The truth is, fear will always try to return. Human beings are fragile creatures living in an unpredictable world. There will always be reasons to worry. Yet faith teaches people not to build homes inside fear. Anxiety may knock at the door of the mind, but it does not deserve permanent residence in the soul. So when anxious thoughts rise, return to prayer again. Return to stillness again. Return to the remembrance that God has not lost control of your life. Breathe deeply this morning. The future does not belong to fear. Your story does not belong to anxiety. Your heart was created for more than constant panic and restless striving. It was created to know peace. It was created to trust. It was created to rest safely in the hands of a loving God. And perhaps today is the day you finally release what has been suffocating your spirit. Not because the problems disappeared overnight, but because you are learning that God is greater than those problems. The burden may still exist, but you no longer carry it alone. So let the fear go little by little. Let the worry loosen its grip, thought by thought. Let faith rise gently within you, like morning light pushing back darkness. For every sunrise is proof that God still believes in new beginnings. Every breath is proof that grace still surrounds your life, and every prayer whispered through trembling lips becomes evidence that hope is still alive within the human soul. You may not know what tomorrow holds, but you can know this: God will meet you there. There are seasons in life when peace feels far away, like a distant shore hidden behind endless waves. Troubles rise without invitation. Pain enters without warning. One phone call can change the direction of a family. One disappointment can shake the confidence of a weary soul. And suddenly, the heart that once sang with joy becomes quiet beneath the weight of living. Human beings know how to survive storms, but many do not know how to rest within them. So they walk through their days carrying invisible wars inside themselves. Smiles become disguises. Strength becomes performance. And somewhere beneath all the responsibilities, expectations, and silent battles, the soul begins aching for something deeper than temporary comfort. It aches for peace, not the fragile peace the world offers, a peace dependent upon perfect circumstances, not the kind that disappears the moment trouble knocks at the door, but the peace of God, the kind that settles into the spirit even while life remains uncertain, the kind of peace that can sit beside grief without being destroyed by it, the kind that survives heartbreak, disappointment, loneliness, and fear. That peace is holy. There are people listening today whose nights have been longer than anyone realizes. They have stared at ceilings while anxiety whispered terrible things into the darkness. They have cried quietly so nobody would hear. They have asked heaven questions that seem to echo back unanswered. Some have become exhausted from pretending to be all right, while secretly falling apart inside. Yet even in troubled times, God still draws near to the brokenhearted. What a beautiful mystery that is. The world often runs from broken people. Society celebrates strength, success, and certainty. But God has always moved toward the wounded. He sits beside the grieving. He comforts the anxious. He listens to the weary. He gathers shattered pieces with gentle hands and reminds hurting souls that they are not abandoned. Sometimes peace arrives, not as a loud miracle, but as a quiet assurance. A person wakes up one morning and realizes they survived another difficult night. Strength somehow appeared again. Breath continued. Hope flickered softly in the darkness. And though the storm had not completely passed, something within them had changed. That something is the presence of God. There are storms people can see, and there are storms hidden deep within the heart. Some troubles arrive publicly, financial hardship, sickness, loss, betrayal. Others remain invisible to everyone except God. The silent fear of not being enough, the ache of loneliness in crowded rooms, the exhaustion of carrying responsibilities nobody else understands. But heaven sees every hidden burden. God notices the tears people wipe away before entering a room. He notices the trembling behind confident voices. He notices the exhaustion hidden beneath forced smiles. Nothing about human suffering escapes his attention, and still he whispers peace. Not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because divine peace does not depend on easy circumstances. A ship is not tested in calm waters. Peace is not proven when everything goes according to plan. True peace reveals itself when chaos surrounds the soul, yet trust remains standing. There is something powerful about a person who has cried deeply, yet still believes God is good. Such faith cannot be manufactured by motivational words alone. It is born in midnight seasons. It is shaped through painful prayers. It is refined by surviving moments that should have broken the spirit completely. And through it all, God remains faithful. Sometimes troubled times make people question their worth. Suffering has a cruel way of convincing the heart that it has been forgotten. But pain is not proof of abandonment. Storms are not evidence that God has stopped caring. Even Jesus calmed storms while standing inside them. The presence of difficulty does not mean the absence of God. Many people search for peace in temporary things. They chase distractions. They bury themselves in work. They scroll endlessly through glowing screens, hoping to outrun their thoughts. Some turn to unhealthy habits, trying to numb emotional wounds. Yet nothing external can permanently quiet an internal storm. Only God can speak to the soul deeply enough to calm its unrest. And when His peace enters a life, it changes the atmosphere within. Fear loses some of its power. Despair loosens its grip. The heart no longer feels so alone in its suffering. Even grief becomes softer when carried in divine hands. Peace also teaches people how to wait. That may be one of the hardest lessons of all. Human beings crave immediate answers. They want healing now, clarity now, breakthrough now. But troubled seasons often involve waiting for doors to open, waiting for prayers to be answered, waiting for strength to return, waiting for understanding to come. And waiting can feel unbearable when the heart is tired. Yet God's peace sustains people in the waiting room of life. It reminds them that delays are not always denials. Sometimes heaven is preparing what the human spirit cannot yet see. Sometimes growth happens underground before anything blooms above the surface. A seed buried in darkness may appear forgotten, but life is quietly forming within it. So it is with troubled hearts. God often works most deeply in seasons that feel silent. While people worry that nothing is changing, heaven is strengthening them internally. Character is being formed, faith is being refined, compassion is growing. The soul is learning dependence upon something greater than itself. And one day, many will look back at the very season they feared most and realize it became the place where they discovered the depth of God's peace. There is another beautiful truth about troubled times. They strip away illusions. Hard seasons teach people what truly matters. Pride begins to fall away. Pretenses lose importance. Hearts become softer. Gratitude becomes more genuine. Prayer becomes more sincere. Pain has a way of bringing people closer to eternity. And though nobody volunteers for suffering, many discover God most intimately there, not in moments of comfort and applause, but in the midnight hours when all earthly strength has failed and only heaven remains. It is there that peace becomes more than a word. It becomes survival. Some mornings, peace looks like simply getting out of bed despite sadness. Some days, it means choosing kindness while carrying grief. Sometimes peace is found in worship songs playing softly through tears. Sometimes it is found in scripture read with trembling hands. Sometimes it arrives through the loving embrace of another human being sent by God at the right moment. However it comes, peace is always sacred, and perhaps today someone needs to hear this clearly. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to stop carrying the entire world on your shoulders. You are allowed to admit you are tired. Even the strongest hearts need comfort sometimes. God never demanded that human beings become machines without emotion. Tears are not weakness. Grief is not failure. Needing peace does not make a person fragile. It makes them human. And what tenderness lives in knowing that God understands humanity completely. He understands every fear you cannot explain, every burden you hide, every silent prayer you whisper into the darkness. He knows the troubles surrounding your life even before you speak them aloud. Still, his invitation remains the same. Come to me. Come weary. Come anxious. Come uncertain. Come grieving. Come tired. And there, in the presence of divine love, troubled hearts begin finding rest again. Not because all storms instantly disappear, but because they no longer face those storms alone. So breathe deeply this morning. The situation may still be unresolved. The answer may still be delayed. The burden may still feel heavy, but God's peace is available even now. Let it settle over your restless thoughts. Let it quiet the chaos within you. Let it remind your soul that darkness never lasts forever. Morning always comes eventually, and when it does, you will discover that God carried you through every troubled night with more tenderness than you ever realized. There are mornings when strength does not arrive like thunder. It does not burst into the soul with dramatic certainty or loud declarations of courage. Instead, it comes quietly, like dawn slipping through curtains, patient and steady, reminding a tired heart that it is still allowed to continue. Many people wake up already weary, not because the body has not rested, but because life itself has been heavy. The mind carries unfinished conversations, unresolved worries, and invisible burdens that no pillow can truly erase. The spirit remembers what the body tries to forget. And so even after sleep, there are mornings when exhaustion lingers like a shadow that refuses to leave. Yet God, in his mercy, does not wait for perfect strength before calling a person forward. He meets weakness with provision. He meets emptiness with renewal. He meets fatigue with grace that does not ask for explanation. To renew strength for the day ahead is to understand that human energy alone was never designed to carry the full weight of existence. There is a limit to what flesh and bone can endure without breaking. There is a limit to what the mind can process without trembling. There is a limit to what the heart can hold without crying out for help. And it is often at the edge of those limits that divine strength begins. Some people have been taught to equate strength with silence. They believe strong people do not fall apart. They believe strong people do not feel overwhelmed. They believe strong people do not need help, so they hide their fatigue behind routines. They disguise their exhaustion behind responsibility. They carry on when every part of them is asking to pause. But true strength is not the absence of weakness. True strength is the presence of God within weakness. There is a sacred moment in every believer's life when they realize they cannot continue relying only on their own reserves. It may come after heartbreak. It may come after disappointment. It may come after long seasons of unanswered prayers. Or it may come quietly in the ordinary routine of a morning when the soul simply whispers, I cannot do this alone anymore. And heaven hears that whisper. Renewing strength begins not with striving harder, but with surrendering deeper. It begins when a tired heart stops demanding that it must be enough by itself and instead opens itself to divine replenishment. Like a dry riverbed waiting for rain, the soul becomes receptive again to what only God can pour in. There is something profoundly tender about the way God restores strength. He does not mock weakness. He does not shame fatigue. He does not turn away from trembling hands or uncertain hearts. Instead, he draws near with compassion that understands every hidden struggle. There are people who woke up today feeling as though yesterday drained them completely. The responsibilities did not pause, the pressures did not lessen, the expectations remain waiting. And yet within them, there is also a quiet desire not to give up, even if they do not yet know how to continue. This is where divine strength becomes real. It is not always loud. It does not always feel like sudden energy. Sometimes it feels like just enough breath to take the next step. Sometimes it feels like just enough clarity to make one more decision. Sometimes it feels like just enough peace to face one more hour. And that is enough because God has never required his children to carry tomorrow's strength today. He provides strength in portions, not burdens in excess. Enough for the moment. Enough for the task, enough for the step in front of you. There is wisdom in understanding that renewal is not a one-time event, but a continual flow. Just as the body requires daily nourishment, the spirit requires daily strengthening. No one eats once and expects to never feel hunger again. In the same way, no one prays once and expects to never need renewal again. Strength is sustained through connection, and that connection is prayer. In prayer, the soul exhales what it has been carrying. It releases fear, pressure, confusion, and weariness into hands that are strong enough to hold them. And in return, it receives something unseen yet deeply felt: renewed courage, renewed hope, renewed endurance. Sometimes renewal comes through scripture, where ancient words breathe life into present struggles. Sometimes it comes through worship, where the heart lifts above its circumstances, even while nothing around it has changed. Sometimes it comes through silence, where God speaks not in noise, but in stillness that settles the spirit. And sometimes renewal comes through tears, because even tears can be a language of release. There is no shame in needing renewal. Even the strongest trees depend on seasons of rest before they bear fruit again. Even the earth itself pauses in cycles, allowing restoration beneath its surface before new growth appears. Life has always been designed with rhythms of strength and renewal woven together. Yet human beings often resist rest. They fear that pausing means falling behind. They fear that admitting exhaustion means failure. But God never rushes a healing soul. He never criticizes a tired heart that asks for replenishment. Instead, he invites rest. Come to me, he says, not because he is distant, but because he is the source of what the soul lacks. And in that coming, strength begins to return. There is a quiet transformation that happens when divine strength enters a weary life. The circumstances may remain unchanged, but the internal posture shifts. What once felt unbearable begins to feel manageable. What once felt overwhelming begins to feel lighter. What once felt like collapse begins to feel like endurance. It is not that the storm disappears immediately, but that the spirit becomes anchored within it. And an anchored soul does not easily drift. Renewing strength also requires letting go of yesterday's residue. Many people carry into today the emotional weight of what happened yesterday, regret, disappointment, fear of repeating mistakes. But each morning carries an invitation to begin again. God does not ration grace based on past failures. He offers fresh mercy with each sunrise. To receive strength for the day ahead, one must release the illusion that yesterday must define today. You are not required to carry every memory into every moment. You are allowed to set down what is already behind you. You are allowed to breathe without the pressure of past burdens shaping every step forward. There is freedom in that release, and in that freedom, strength is restored. There will still be challenges today. Life does not promise absence of difficulty, but it does promise presence, not absence of struggle, but presence of God within struggle. And that presence is what renews the heart when everything else feels depleted. So today, even if you feel tired, even if you feel uncertain, even if you feel stretched beyond your limits, there is still something available to you that cannot be exhausted. Divine strength. It does not run out. It does not diminish with use. It does not depend on your perfection. It is given freely to those who ask, those who pause, those who open their hearts even slightly to receive it. And perhaps that is the quiet miracle of this morning. Not that you feel fully strong in yourself, but that you are held by a strength greater than your own. So breathe again. Let today not be carried by your exhaustion alone. Let it be carried by grace that renews, sustains, and gently lifts you into each unfolding hour. For strength is not always found in what you can endure alone, but in who walks with you while you endure it. Uncertainty has a way of unsettling the human spirit like few other things can. It does not always arrive with loud alarms or visible danger. Instead, it sits quietly in the corners of the mind, asking endless questions that have no immediate answers. It stretches time thin, making minutes feel heavy and days feel suspended. It teaches the heart how to worry in advance, how to imagine outcomes that have not yet been written, and how to carry burdens that may never come to pass. There are people who wake up each morning and immediately feel the weight of not knowing how the bills will be paid, not knowing how the illness will unfold, not knowing whether the relationship will heal or break, not knowing what tomorrow will demand. And in that not knowing, anxiety often builds its fragile kingdom. Yet faith enters that same uncertainty with a different posture. It does not deny the unknown. It does not pretend every path is visible. Instead, it learns to stand still in the presence of mystery and still say, I trust you. Trusting God with uncertain situations is not a shallow declaration made when life is easy. It is a deep surrender formed in the tension between fear and hope. It is the quiet courage of a soul that refuses to be ruled by what it cannot control. Human beings naturally desire clarity. They want maps for every journey, explanations for every delay, guarantees for every decision. But life rarely offers such certainty. More often, it offers fog. It offers waiting rooms. It offers closed doors that refuse to reveal what lies behind them. And in those spaces, the heart must choose what will guide it, fear or faith. Fear will always demand immediate answers. It will whisper that delay means danger, that silence means abandonment, that uncertainty means failure. Fear paints the unknown in dark colors and convinces the heart that what is unseen must be unsafe. But faith speaks a different language. Faith says that unseen does not mean unguided. Faith says that silence does not mean absence. Faith says that delay does not mean denial. Faith teaches the heart to rest in the character of God rather than the clarity of circumstances. There is a sacred difference between knowing the future and trusting the one who holds it. Many people struggle not because their situation is impossible, but because their need for control is exhausted. They try to carry outcomes in their minds before those outcomes have even arrived. They rehearse conversations that have not happened. They imagine endings that have not been written. They live emotionally in tomorrow while physically standing in today. And in doing so, they drain the strength meant for the present moment. God never asked his children to carry tomorrow's uncertainty today. Trust is not the absence of questions. Trust is the decision not to let questions become masters over the heart. It is choosing to place those questions in God's hands again and again, even when they return knocking at the door of thought. There are moments when uncertainty feels especially heavy, when decisions cannot be rushed, when outcomes depend on factors beyond human influence, when waiting becomes the only available action. In those moments, the soul is invited into a deeper kind of faith, one that does not depend on visibility, but on relationship. For trust is not built in comfort. It is built in closeness. A child learns to trust a parent, not because the world is always predictable, but because the presence of love has been proven over time. So it is with God. Trust grows when the heart remembers what God has already done, when memory becomes a testimony, when past deliverance becomes a foundation for present waiting. There is wisdom in remembering survival. You have survived days you thought would break you. You have walked through seasons that once felt endless. You have endured losses you once believed you would not recover from. And yet here you are, still breathing, still becoming, still held by grace that did not abandon you in your hardest hour. Uncertainty often forgets history. It convinces the heart that today's unknown is greater than yesterday's deliverance, but faith gently calls the soul to remember the same God who carried you before has not changed. He is not less faithful today than he was yesterday. Trusting God in uncertain situations also requires releasing the illusion that human understanding is the ultimate authority. There is comfort in logic, in planning, in strategy. These are gifts, but they are not gods. They are tools, not foundations. When life becomes unpredictable, tools alone cannot sustain peace. Only trust can. And trust often grows in silence. There are prayers that are spoken, and there are prayers that are lived. Some prayers are words lifted in desperation. Others are choices made in quiet surrender. Choosing not to panic is a prayer. Choosing not to assume the worst is a prayer. Choosing to breathe instead of spiral is a prayer. God hears those prayers too. There is also something deeply humbling about uncertainty. It reminds human beings that they are not sovereign over their lives. Control is often an illusion, carefully maintained until something disrupts it. A sudden change, a closed door, a shifting plan. And in those disruptions, people are reminded of their limitations. But limitation is not a place of despair when God is present within it. In fact, limitation becomes the doorway through which trust enters. When human certainty ends, divine assurance begins. There are people right now standing in seasons where answers are slow to come. They may be waiting for healing that has not yet manifested, waiting for reconciliation that has not yet arrived, waiting for direction that has not yet been made clear. And waiting can feel like standing in suspended time, where every day feels like the same unanswered question. But even in waiting, God is not idle. What looks like silence to human ears is often preparation in divine hands. What feels like delay may be alignment. What feels like confusion may be unseen coordination of events that are not yet ready to be revealed. Trust allows the heart to rest even when the mind does not yet understand. And that rest is not passive. It is active surrender. It is the decision to stop wrestling with outcomes that belong to God. It is the willingness to say, even if I cannot see the path, I will still walk in peace. Peace and uncertainty is not natural. It is cultivated. It grows each time fear is interrupted by prayer. Each time worry is replaced with remembrance. Each time the heart chooses to believe that God is both present and purposeful. There is a quiet strength in people who learn to trust God in uncertain situations. They do not always look different on the outside. Their circumstances may still be unfolding. Their answers may still be pending, but something within them is anchored. They are not easily shaken by what shifts around them, because trust gives the soul roots. And rooted souls do not easily collapse when winds change direction. It is also important to understand that trusting God does not mean absence of emotion. It does not mean denying fear or pretending confusion does not exist. Even the strongest believers feel uncertainty deeply. The difference is not in feeling, but in response. Faith does not erase human emotion, it redirects it. Fear says, everything depends on you. Faith says, everything depends on God. And in that shift, the burden changes hands. There is relief in that exchange. Perhaps today you are standing in a situation that feels unresolved, unclear, or unpredictable. Perhaps you are waiting for something that feels delayed beyond your understanding. Perhaps you are carrying questions that seem to have no immediate answers. You are not alone in that place. And more importantly, you are not without guidance. Trust is not about having certainty in outcomes. It is about having confidence in God's character. It is knowing that even when the road is hidden, the one who walks beside you is not. So breathe deeply in this moment. Let go of the pressure to figure everything out today. Release the need to predict what only time will reveal. Allow your spirit to rest in the truth that you are held even in uncertainty. For the unknown is not unknown to God. And in that truth, the heart finds a peace that does not depend on explanation, only on trust.